Om Aganda Timarandasya Ganajana Shivakaya Chakshur Umrisamyena Tajma Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him.
Krishna Kirtana Bhanana Tanapano.
Hare Krishna. Welcome back to this video series on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translated by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are currently on Chapter 14, the three modes of material nature. In Chapter 14, the Supreme Personality in detail explains the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, as the forces that bind and control all conditioned souls within this world. A soul can, however, transcend these modes through devotional service. Thus, the limitations imposed by the three modes of nature can be overthrown and the soul can be elevated to the Brahman platform, the constitutional position of purity and happiness, a platform of which Krishna is the basis. Text number 1. The Blessed Lord said, "Again, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained to the supreme perfection. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain the transcendental nature, which is like my own nature. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation, nor disturbed at the time of dissolution. The total material substance, called Brahman, is a source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings, O son of Bharat. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Material nature consists of the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes in contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these modes. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it is free from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge, but they become conditioned by the concept of happiness. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti, and because of this, one is bound to material fruitive activities. O son of Bharat, the mode of ignorance causes the delusion of all living entities. The result of this mode is madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. The mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions him to the fruits of action, and ignorance to madness. Chapter 13 described the conditioned soul as distinct from material nature, yet entangled by it, trapped within his field of activities. Chapter 14 reveals in detail how the living entity is limited and controlled within his field by the powerful shackles of material nature, the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. At the end of chapter 14, Krishna informs us how to obtain freedom from these modes. From the 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, Sri Krishna in detail reveals the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now the Lord Himself is further enlightening Arjuna. If one understands this chapter through the process of philosophical speculation, he will come to an understanding of devotional service. The 13th chapter, it was clearly explained that by humbly developing knowledge, one may possibly be freed from the material entanglement. It has also been explained that it is due to association with the modes of nature that the living entity is entangled in this material world. Now, in this chapter, the Supreme Personality explains what those modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how they give liberation. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transferred to the spiritual world. the eternal living entity, comes in contact with material nature and becomes conditioned by it. In other words, despite his desire for independent enjoyment, his existence is subject to strict control by the modes of material nature. The fault which causes a soul's conditioned state certainly rests in his own independent desire. We cannot blame Krishna any more than a criminal can blame a judge for his jail sentence. Once we come to the material world, we need to assume a false identity, a false ego, which is like a reflection of our true consciousness within matter. Based on that false ego, the ingredients for both subtle and gross material bodies are generated. Based on such bodies, we become controlled by a specific combination of the modes of material nature and naturally become attracted to exploiting particular combinations of matter. Thus the soul, constitutionally Krishna's eternal servant, full of bliss, knowledge, and eternity, becomes attracted to the material atmosphere and conditioned by it. He is then strictly controlled by the modes of material nature and experiences his self as if it were made of temporary matter. Every inhabitant of the material world has earned his prison sentence, and all are bound by the ropes of material nature with the three strands of goodness, passion, and ignorance twisted tight to give them strength. Texts 6 and 7 and 8 describe the effects of each of the modes upon the conditioned soul. These verses also, one after another, explain the ways in which goodness, passion, and ignorance force a soul to experience his existence. Srila Prabhupada describes the difference between goodness and ignorance in his purport. The mode of ignorance is just the opposite of the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, by development of knowledge, one can understand what is what, but the mode of ignorance is just the opposite. Everyone, under the spell of the mode of ignorance, becomes mad, and a madman cannot understand what is what. Instead of making advancement, he becomes degraded. Text 9 summarizes text 6, 7, and 8. When one is contaminated by goodness, he is too self-satisfied to follow the dictates of the supersoul. When one is contaminated by the mode of passion, his desires speak too loudly, and he cannot hear the voice of his dear friend, the supersoul. If one is contaminated by the mode of ignorance, he is too inert, ignorant, and mad to hear the supersoul. Thus the modes of nature condition the living entity and keep him satisfied in different encasements as he pursues pleasure in the material world. Text number 10. Sometimes the mode of passion becomes prominent, defeating the mode of goodness, O son of Bharat, and sometimes the mode of goodness defeats passion, and at other times the mode of ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. The manifestations of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. O chief of the Bharats, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, uncontrollable desire, hankering, and intense endeavor develop. O son of Kunti, when there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, madness, illusion, inertia, and darkness are manifested. When one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets. When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities. And when he dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. By acting in the modes of goodness, one becomes purified. Works done in the mode of passion result in distress, and actions performed in the mode of ignorance result in foolishness. In the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, grief develops. And from the mode of ignorance, foolishness, madness, and illusion develop. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. After describing the effects of the modes, Krishna now tells Arjuna that the modes are not constant in their influence upon the living entity. According to our karma, our work, our association, our choice of food, and so on, a particular mode becomes predominant within us. Here Krishna indicates the awkwardness of the eternal, non-changing soul's predicament within this constantly changing world. Srila Prabhupada therefore writes, one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness has to transcend these three modes. By studying text 11 through 13, we get an idea which modes of nature are affecting us. Different times of the day and various occurrences throughout the day place us under the control of one mode or another. While developing our Krishna consciousness, we must attempt to perform our services in at least the mode of goodness. Service tinged by passion and ignorance adversely affects our consciousness. How can we, aspiring devotees, become purified enough to serve in goodness? Srila Prabhupada explains the process. If one hears about Krishna or God, then gradually he becomes free from the clutches of darkness and passion. And actually, he then comes to the platform of goodness. When he is perfectly in goodness, then this passion and ignorance and their byproducts cannot touch him. If we hear the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita regularly, then we become free from the effects of the modes of ignorance and passion, and gradually, though it takes time, but it is sure. The more you hear about Krishna, this means his instructions, his pastimes, the glorification of him, the more we become purified. So that is the test of how one has become purified. One purified from the base qualities of passion and ignorance is no more attacked by greediness and passion. When he is no more disturbed by these base qualities of passion and greediness, he is happy. While text 16 describes the results of action in each of the three modes of nature, the next text explains the intermediate causes of those results. Action and goodness result in knowledge, which brings about proper action, resulting in purity. Action and passion produces misery because it is caused by unlimited desires and greed. Action and ignorance brings about madness and illusion, which causes one to act foolishly. Srila Prabhupada's purport stresses development of the mode of goodness. Since the present civilization is not very congenial to the living entities, Krishna consciousness is recommended. Through Krishna consciousness, society will develop the mode of goodness. When the mode of goodness is developed, people will see things as they are. In the mode of ignorance, people are just like animals and cannot see things clearly. In the mode of passion, people become greedy, and their hankering for sense enjoyment has no limit. Two verbs are used in verse 18. Tell of the destinations of those who are acting in the modes of nature. Gachati, go, is used twice to describe the destinations of those in goodness and those in ignorance. Tisati, stay, indicates that those in passion stay on earth in their next life. Varieties of activities and other factors, as Krishna explained to Uddhava in the 11th canto, affect how we are influenced by the modes of nature. Agama, which shastras we hear. Apa, the water we drink and the types of food we eat. Praja, our association. Desa, where we live. Kala, the time of day. Karma, our activities. Jnanma, our conditioning from birth. Dhyan, our thoughts, mantras, what we chant. And samskaras, the varnashram ceremonies we undergo, which begin with impregnation and end with burial. Having described the all-pervasive control of the modes of nature, Krishna tells us in the next and final sections of this chapter how to transcend the modes and explains his own position in relationship to them. Text number 19. When you see that there is nothing beyond these modes of nature in all activities, and that the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all these modes, then you can know my supreme nature. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Arjuna inquired, "My dear Lord, by what symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature?" The Blessed Lord said, "He who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, nor longs for them when they disappear, who is seated like one unconcerned, being situated beyond these material reactions of the modes of nature, who remains firm, knowing that the modes alone are active, who regards alike pleasure and pain, and looks on a clod, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is wise and holds praise and blame to be the same, who is unchanged in honor and dishonor, who treats friend and foe alike, who has abandoned all fruitive undertakings, such a man is said to have transcended the modes of nature. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, and which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. Krishna here equates transcending the modes of material nature with liberation from the material world. The first step is to observe the modes working upon us. Then, by observing the modes at work, we can understand that the modes, not we, are active, and that we are separate. In this way, we can come to understand that we are eternal living entities, separate from both our everyday activities and the modes. The second step is to understand Krishna's position. Although Krishna appears to be acting within the material sphere, he is fully transcendental. Srila Prabhupada writes, "A man in Krishna consciousness is not controlled by the spell of the material modes of nature. It has already been stated in the 7th chapter, text 13 through 14, that one who has surrendered to Krishna is relieved from the activities of material nature. For one who is able to see things as they are, the influence of material nature gradually ceases." Text 21, Arjuna inquired, "O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature?" Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan expands and rephrases the meaning of Arjuna's questions. Arjuna first asks, what symptoms of transcendence will manifest in a person no longer affected by the modes? The question rephrased is, how do we understand that someone has already transcended? The second question, what is his behavior, means, is his behavior regulated or enacted according to his own desire? The third question asks, by what practices does he achieve transcendence? In the remainder of this chapter, Krishna answers these questions. The answer to the first question explains that a transcendentalist is neutral to the modes. He is freed from hankering and envy, being indifferent to their pushings. Those are the symptoms of one unaffected by the modes. Srila Prabhupada writes, when one in consciousness of the material world, he acts only for sense gratification. But when one transfers the consciousness to Krishna, sense gratification automatically stops. One does not need this material body, and he does not need to accept the dictations of the material body. The qualities of the material modes in the body will act, but as spirit soul, the self is aloof from such activities. How does he become aloof? He does not desire to enjoy the body, nor does he desire to get out of it. Thus, transcendentally situated, the devotee becomes automatically free. They need not try to become free from the influence of the material modes of material nature. The next question, what is such a person's behavior? they are equally disposed and sees everything equally because they have realized that they have nothing to do with material existence. Such a person never acts whimsically. Rather, in full surrender to Krishna and aloof from the modes, he executes their Krishna consciousness with fixed determination. The basic point is the same. Through knowledge, we become detached from the pushings of the modes and liberated from this world. Bhakti is for both the sadhaka and the practitioner and the siddha, the perfect devotee. Karmis and jnanis must eventually give up their processes as they attain higher stages of consciousness. But one need never give up bhakti. Even karmis and jnanis who do not desire the shelter of Krishna's service as their ultimate goal must take to devotional service in order to achieve the fruit of their processes. In his purport to the opening verse of this chapter, Srila Prabhupada stated that one could come to an understanding of devotional service by studying this chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the three modes of material nature, through philosophical speculation, by applying our intelligence to understanding the nature of the modes' stringent control in the world. We will understand the power of the Supersoul who controls those modes. Then, if we are free from envy, we will understand our intelligence and surrender to that controller. That ends this chapter. Thank you for watching. Hope you return when we will discuss chapter 15, entitled Yoga of the Supreme. Hare Krishna.
Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujaga Sri Jiva Gopalakam Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tana Param Primam Vira Dhira Jana Priya Kana Nima Sadam Pujito Krishna Kirtana